She just posted the number. Not the round count. Not the ticket sales. The other number, the one nobody in her camp wants circulating 3 weeks before she steps into State Farm Arena on August 15th to face Kaye Scott, because that number is the streaming count on her own diss record. And it is so catastrophically small that AI, actual synthetic artificial intelligence, has now stepped into the ring and is out-rapping Claressa Shields on her own beef. Let me say that again so it lands the way it needs to land. A woman who calls herself the greatest woman of all time in boxing, a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, a unified middleweight world champion, is currently getting bodied in a rap war she personally started against Alycia Baumgardner. And the person doing the most damage to her right now is not a rapper, not a boxer, not even a human being. It is a cloned Remy Ma voice generated by AI, spitting a verse so surgical it made the entire internet ask the same question at the same time. How did we get here? And more importantly, why does the machine sound more focused on Claressa's career than Claressa does? Everything you have been told about this beef has been framed around the wrong question. Everybody has been arguing about who won the diss track. Nobody has been asking why a world champion boxer with a title fight in less than 3 weeks is spending her training camp in a studio instead of a gym, why her opponent Alycia Baumgardner has not even responded, why a random Miami content creator named Geisha 305 landed a cleaner punch on her than she landed on Baumgardner, and why an AI Remy Ma verse is now the thing everybody is quoting. Because when you connect the fingernail clip, the Kaye Scott fight date, the Papoose situation, and the streaming numbers, this stops being a rap beef. This becomes the clearest documented case in modern boxing of an athlete self-sabotaging a title run in real time, and by the time we get to the section on the endorsement patches on her trunks, and I promise you we are getting there, you are going to understand why this entire summer was never about music and was always about a woman trying to force-feed the world a version of herself the world already rejected. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Alright, so let me set the whole table before we start eating, because if you are new to this saga, and honestly even if you have been watching it unfold in real time, the layers on this thing are wild and you need every single one of them to understand why this AI Remy verse hit the way it did. Claressa Shields is a professional boxer, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, unified world champion. On paper, she is the most accomplished woman in the history of American boxing, and there is no serious argument against that resume. That is the part everybody agrees on. Now, on August 15th of this year, she is scheduled to fight Kaye Scott at State Farm Arena in Atlanta for the WBC and WBA Unified Middleweight World Championship, live on DAZN. This is not a tune-up. This is not an exhibition. This is a real, sanctioned, world title fight in less than 3 weeks from where we are sitting right now. So the reasonable expectation, the expectation any boxing fan on earth would have, is that she is in a training camp somewhere with her phone confiscated, her nutrition dialed in, her sparring partners on rotation, and her only public appearances being the mandatory press obligations to sell the fight. That is not what is happening. What is happening instead is that Claressa spent the last several weeks in a full-blown rap beef with fellow boxer Alycia Baumgardner, allegedly slapped Baumgardner at a public event, then dropped a diss track called Run Your Mouth over the Ya Glow beat, and has been posting glamour photos, makeover reveals, and self-promoting content at a rate that would embarrass a reality TV star, let alone a world champion boxer 3 weeks out from a title defense. And Baumgardner, this is the part that is so telling, has essentially not responded. No diss track. No real tweet. She is just working. She has a TV show reportedly coming up. She has said her piece and moved on. And that silence from Baumgardner is louder than any response could have been, because it forced Claressa to keep talking to fill the void, and the more Claressa talked, the more the internet turned on her. Which brings us to the actual crisis. Because while Claressa was busy trying to force-feed the world this baddie, glow-up, rap star version of herself, 2 brand new diss tracks aimed directly at her went viral in the same week. One from a Miami content creator named Geisha 305 who has been targeted by Claressa's camp for months. The other supposedly from Remy Ma, but actually AI cloned. Neither of these people were originally part of this beef. Both of them dropped tracks that got more traction than Claressa's own diss did. And that is the situation. A world champion boxer, 3 weeks from a title fight, is losing a rap war she started to 2 people who were not even in the war to begin with, one of whom is not even a real person. So the question is not who won. The question is, what is this actually doing to her career, her fight, and the way the culture is now permanently going to remember her? And that is the question the rest of this video is going to answer. Let's start with what is visible, because you do not need insider access to see the damage. First piece of evidence, and this is the one that sets the tone for everything else, is Claressa's original diss record aimed at Alycia Baumgardner, titled Run Your Mouth and rapped over the Yeah Glow beat from Glorilla. The track dropped, was pushed hard by her camp, was covered by outlets like Hot 97 and multiple boxing pages, and then did absolutely nothing. I want you to understand what I mean by nothing. This is a world champion athlete with a built-in audience of boxing fans, hip-hop fans, and mainstream sports media, dropping a track calibrated to go viral off an already viral beat. And the streaming numbers were so quiet you could hear a pin drop in the comments section. Double apple cider vinegar numbers, as the culture would say. And the lyrics themselves were the problem. The flow was nursery rhyme cadence. The bars leaned on recycled Tupac references, recycled Kanye lines, and even a Chappelle Show quote, all packed into a verse that never doubled up, never switched flows, never gave you a single quotable moment. It sounded, and I am being generous here, like something a Papoose ghostwrite session would produce on a bad afternoon. And that would be embarrassing on its own, but it becomes catastrophic when you realize the target of the diss, Alycia Baumgardner, did not even acknowledge it. No response. No tweet. No shot back. Just silence. And in the game of public perception, silence from your target when you dropped a full diss record is the same thing as being left on read after sliding in somebody's DMs. Everybody watching knows what that means. Second piece of evidence. The Geisha 305 track. Now, if you do not know who Geisha 305 is, she is a Miami-based content creator who has been vocal about Claressa Shields for months, and Claressa's inner circle allegedly launched a smear campaign against her, trying to spread narratives that her daughter did not like her and that she was a bad grandmother. Standard deflection stuff. Except Geisha 305 responded not with a video, not with a tweet, but with a full song, either performed by her or AI-generated on her page, titled around the concept of Claressa having dirty fingernails and questionable hygiene. And I know that sounds absurd on paper, but the track landed because it was anchored in real, documented behavior. There is video footage that has been circulating for months of Claressa Shields clipping press-on nails in a public gym, flicking them onto the ground, and there are photos where her actual fingernails look, in the kindest possible framing, unkempt. Combined with the long-running whisper stories from her loss to Savannah Marshall, where fighters like Jada Robinson have reportedly said she did not shower for a week after the defeat, and suddenly the hygiene angle is not a random shot. It is a documented pattern. The Geisha 305 track ran with lines about boo-boo under the fingernails, about her nails needing to match her beats, about the risk of a tetanus shot from any accidental contact, and the internet ran with every single bar. That track outperformed Claressa's own diss. Let that sink in. A content creator with a fraction of the platform outperformed a world champion. Third piece of evidence. The makeover pattern. Look at any recent photo of Claressa from the last several weeks and put it next to a photo from her actual training camp for the Kaye Scott fight. The complexion difference between the two photos is so stark that people online started openly speculating she was heavily processing her images, and this is a woman who publicly went on record attacking light-skinned black women, saying they were her biggest haters. Meanwhile, in the dead of summer, when the average person is getting darker, her photos are getting progressively lighter. And even setting the complexion issue aside, the sheer volume of makeover content, new hair, new lashes, new outfits, new photo shoots from a woman who is supposed to be in a training camp for a middleweight world title fight, is unlike anything I can recall from any professional boxer, male or female, in the modern era. Fourth piece of evidence. The endorsement situation. Look at what she is wearing when she does step into official press appearances. Look at the trunks. Look at the shirts. The number of small patches, the number of local sponsors, the visible absence of any single major brand deal, Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, Puma. None of them are attached to her in the way you would expect for the self-proclaimed greatest woman of all time. And that is not me editorializing. That is what the AI Remy verse literally called out and what the internet immediately confirmed by pulling receipts. When the biggest brands in athletic apparel are not signing the woman who claims to be the biggest name in her sport, the market is telling you something the marketing cannot cover up. And oh, do I have more? Because everything I just walked through is only the surface. That is the part your cousin who watches boxing casually already knows. What comes next is the part that Claressa's stans are absolutely going to hate, because it moves from what is visible to what is being said inside the culture by people who actually have skin in the game. And the thing I want you to pay attention to specifically is the pattern I am about to lay out around the copycat allegations, because when you see who is quietly co-signing that narrative, you are going to understand why AI Remy hit the exact button she hit. Stay locked in. This next stretch is where the story stops being about a bad diss record and starts being about a manufactured identity collapsing in real time. So let's move into the cultural layer, because this is where the story gets sharp. First cultural piece of evidence. Remy Ma herself, the real Remy, has already been publicly on the receiving end of Claressa's admiration and imitation for a long time, and she has not been quiet about it. Remy has referenced, in interviews and on social media, being on Claressa's mood board, meaning Claressa was reportedly in her DM sending photos, asking about outfits, asking about looks, essentially style shopping from Remy for months. So when an AI-generated Remy voice drops a verse that says, "You was a dusty little duck until you tried to copy me," the reason that line detonated is because it is not a random insult. It is a documented allegation that the real Remy Ma has essentially already made in softer language. The AI just said the quiet part out loud with a hard beat behind it. Second cultural piece of evidence. The Gucci and fashion iconography call-out in the AI Remy verse. You wanted the Chanel bag, the Gucci, and the Fendi lines up exactly with the pattern of Claressa's Instagram feed over the last year. Fashion posts, luxury flexes, designer content, all in a style that mirrors Remy's aesthetic and other established New York rapper wives. This is not a coincidence being manufactured by AI. This is AI observing a documented pattern of aesthetic imitation and putting it into bar form. Third cultural piece of evidence. Her own on-record admissions. Claressa has said in multiple past interviews that she did not care about makeup, did not care about doing her hair, did not care about being feminine in the traditional sense until well after most young women had started experimenting with those things. And that was her brand for years, the tomboy, the no-frills fighter, the woman who just wanted to punch people in the face. So when she suddenly pivots into full baddie mode at age 30, mid-title run, and starts posting glamour content daily, the internet is not being cruel by noticing the switch. The AI Remy verse that says, "You never got your hair done, never got your nails laid until you started," is literally quoting her own past interviews back at her. The receipts are her own words. Fourth cultural piece of evidence. The response from other women in boxing. Alycia Baumgardner's silence is one thing, but look at the rest of the division. Look at how quiet Savannah Marshall has been. Look at how quiet Franghon Cruz Dezern has been. Look at how quiet the entire women's middleweight and super welterweight landscape has been. Nobody is coming to Claressa's defense. Not one active fighter is publicly saying she is being treated unfairly. And in boxing, where fighters routinely defend each other against media narratives even when they have personal beef, that kind of universal silence from your peers is a message. Nobody wants to be associated with what she is doing right now. I want to acknowledge the counterargument here because I want this to be fair. Somebody in the comments is already typing out that Claressa is a woman. She is allowed to have a personality. She is allowed to explore her femininity. She is allowed to enjoy music, and none of this should be held against her. And on the surface, that is a reasonable point. I am not against a fighter having a personality. I am not against a woman getting glammed up. What I am against, and what the entire culture is reacting to, is the timing. 3 weeks before a middleweight world title fight is not the moment. If she was doing all of this in the off-season between fights, nobody would care. If she was doing this after the Kaye Scott fight to promote a music project, nobody would care. Doing it during what is supposed to be a training camp for a world championship, while starting rap beefs with peers, while getting bodied in those rap beefs, while your opponent for the actual fight has to sell the fight by herself, that is the issue. It is not the makeover. It is the calendar. And that distinction is exactly why the criticism is landing so hard and so universally right now. Now here is where I need everybody to buckle in, because we are pivoting hard. Everything we have talked about so far is entertainment. Rap beef, diss tracks, hygiene jokes, AI verses. Fun stuff. Now I need to talk to you like a grown-up about what is actually happening underneath all of this, because when you strip away the memes and look at the business layer, this is not a story about a bad diss track. This is a story about a woman whose entire brand infrastructure is collapsing in slow motion, and the diss tracks are just the symptom. Let's start with the promotional structure. In boxing, especially in women's boxing where the mainstream media coverage is already thin, the fighter is her own marketing department. Every press appearance, every interview, every social media post is either selling the fight or it is not. When Claressa is spending her airtime on makeovers, on rap beefs, on defending herself from hygiene disses, that is airtime that is not being spent selling the August 15th fight against Kaye Scott. And that matters because DAZN is a subscription platform. Ticket sales at State Farm Arena matter. Pay-per-view eyeballs matter. Every dollar that fight generates is a dollar that either does or does not justify her next purse, her next title shot, her next promotional deal. And when the discourse around her 3 weeks out from the fight is did AI Remy cook her instead of who is going to win this middleweight unification, she is bleeding revenue in real time, whether her camp wants to admit it or not. That is the first systemic angle. The promotional economy of women's boxing is unforgiving, and she is actively burning her own promotional runway. Second systemic angle. The endorsement pipeline. I already mentioned the patches. Let me expand. In modern combat sports, the delta between a top-tier fighter and a superstar is not skill, it is endorsement portfolio. Ronda Rousey did not become Ronda Rousey because of her judo. She became Ronda Rousey because Reebok, Buffalo Wild Wings, Carl's Jr., and a dozen other brands lined up to write checks. Katie Taylor, in women's boxing specifically, has a portfolio that reflects her cultural weight. Claressa Shields, despite the resume, does not. The reason is not that brands do not know who she is. The reason is that brands do market research, and market research on Claressa keeps flagging the same problems: polarizing public statements, unpredictable social media behavior, on-camera moments that create liability. Brands do not sign athletes who make them nervous. And every single week of this current rap beef, hygiene disc, AI Remy cycle is another data point in the "She Makes Us Nervous" column at every major brand's marketing department. She is not just losing a rap beef. She is closing endorsement doors in real time. That is a much bigger financial hit than any one purse. Third systemic angle. The narrative economy of hip-hop crossover. This is the one nobody is talking about, and it is the most important one. When an athlete tries to cross over into hip-hop as an artist, they are entering a market where the culture polices authenticity ruthlessly. Shaquille O'Neal survived it because he leaned into being a novelty. Damian Lillard survived it because his bars were actually respectable and he stayed in his lane. Master P made it work because he was actually a rapper first. What does not survive is the athlete who tries to force-feed the culture a real rapper identity while doing everything else that signals they do not respect the craft: recycled bars, borrowed flows, weak diss records, and no willingness to actually study the game. The culture will let you rap. The culture will not let you claim you can rap while getting bodied by an AI verse. And once the culture has made that decision about you, it is essentially irreversible. Ask anybody who tried to come back from a viral bad bars moment. It does not happen. So what Claressa is doing right now, without seeming to realize it, is permanently closing a door that she may have thought was open. Any future hip-hop crossover play, a feature, a label deal, a cosign from a major artist, becomes exponentially harder every day this cycle continues, because the culture's verdict is being written right now in real time. And the verdict is not favorable. Those three systemic layers, the promotional economy, the endorsement pipeline, and the crossover narrative, are all pointing at the same conclusion, and the conclusion is the hardest thing I am going to say in this video. So I want everybody to be ready for it. Here is the truth bomb. What we are watching right now is not a rap beef. What we are watching is the public, in real time, revoking Claressa Shields' unofficial license to call herself the greatest woman of all time. And I want to be really careful and really precise here, because I am not saying her resume is being revoked. Her resume is her resume. 2 Olympic gold medals. Multiple world championships in multiple divisions. That is history, and history does not care about diss tracks. What I am saying is that the cultural title, the GWAT branding, the marketing platform, the crossover superstar identity she has been trying to build on top of her resume, that is what is being dismantled in real time by the exact behavior she thinks is building it. And the tragedy of it, and I mean tragedy in the actual sense of the word, is that she is doing this to herself. Nobody set a trap for her. Baumgardner did not force her to drop a diss track. Geisha 305 did not force her to publish that Instagram gym video. AI Remy did not force her to build an aesthetic that was so imitative it wrote its own diss verse. Every single choice that led to this moment was made by her, in her own studio, in her own dressing room, in her own social media queue. And that is the part that has the culture, allegedly and in my analysis, essentially done. Because the audience will forgive a fighter for losing a fight. The audience will forgive a fighter for a bad night. The audience will not forgive a fighter for making them watch her disrespect her own historic career in slow motion 3 weeks before a world title defense. That is the line. And she crossed it. And the evidence that she crossed it is not my opinion. It is documented in the streaming numbers of her diss track versus the streaming numbers of the responses to her diss track. When your ops are outperforming you at your own event, the crowd has already voted. And the crowd's vote right now, based on every single data point we have walked through in this video, is that the GWET era of marketing is over. The championship reign in the ring might continue, and I actually hope it does, but the crossover superstar chapter she was trying to write ended the day Remy dropped that verse, and half the internet said the machine sounded more focused than she did. That is what makes this reveal so heavy. She did not lose to a rival. She lost to her own reflection played back through a machine. And here is where the story turns, and I want to bring it home, because the beautiful part of this culture, the part that always sorts itself out, is that while all of this noise is happening, the people who are actually doing the work are still doing the work. Alycia Baumgardner has, throughout this entire cycle, done exactly what a professional does. She said her piece early, she stopped engaging, she reportedly has a television project in development, and she is letting her career speak for her instead of trying to shout over her critics. Kaye Scott, meanwhile, is quietly in her training camp, preparing for the biggest opportunity of her career on August 15th, doing exactly what a challenger is supposed to do, showing up, staying quiet, and letting the fight talk. Even Geisha 305, for all the noise around her involvement in this, is a content creator who built her platform post by post and is now getting more engagement than a world champion because she stayed consistent with what she does. Every person in this story who is winning right now is winning because they made the main thing the main thing. And every person who is losing because they did not. That is the entire moral of the story in one sentence. Focus wins. Distraction loses. And the reason this culture is going to be okay, the reason the sport is going to be okay, the reason women's boxing is going to be okay, is that the pipeline of fighters who understand that lesson is deeper than it has ever been. Franchon Cruz Dezern is out here doing the work. Savannah Marshall is out here doing the work. Katie Taylor is out here doing the work. Chantel Cameron is out here doing the work. The sport has more real professionals in it than at any point in its history, and no amount of one person's self-inflicted damage can undo that momentum. And on the hip-hop side, the culture is doing the same thing. Real MCs are still writing real bars. Real artists are still respecting the craft. And when somebody tries to shortcut the process, whether they are a fighter, an actor, or anybody else, the culture responds exactly the way it responded here, with receipts, with humor, and with a full accounting. The system is working. The gatekeepers of both the sport and the culture are doing their jobs. And so what feels like chaos in the short term is actually the culture cleaning house in real time, protecting the people who are doing it right by publicly exposing the people who are trying to fake their way through it. That is the resolution here. Not that Claressa Shields is finished as a boxer. She may very well beat Kaye Scott on August 15th and continue her championship reign. But that the culture has decided, correctly, that being a world-class boxer and being a world-class marketable superstar are two separate titles, and you have to earn the second one the same way you earned the first one. And she did not. And this is only the start. I want to be very specific about what to watch for over the next few weeks, because there are at least 2 more shoes about to drop that are going to be enormous. The first thing to watch is what happens between now and August 15th when the fight actually takes place, because if this pattern of behavior continues right up to fight week, there is a real conversation to be had about whether her training camp was compromised. And if the Kaye Scott fight goes longer or more competitively than anybody expects, this entire summer of distraction becomes the reason why. That is a huge story if it happens, and you're going to want to be subscribed for that breakdown. The second thing to watch is whether the real Remy Ma responds to the AI Remy verse, because that is a wild scenario of a real artist being asked to weigh in on an AI clone of herself dissing a boxer. And however Remy handles it is going to set precedent for how the entire hip-hop industry deals with AI voice cloning going forward. That is not just a rap beef story anymore, that is a full industry story, and we are going to be all over it. Make sure you are subscribed and notifications are turned on, because when either of those shoes drops, this channel is going to be the first place breaking it down with the real analysis, not the surface reaction. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Do you think Claressa recovers from this cycle before August 15th, or is the damage already done? And before you click off, I need you to watch the video coming up next on your screen, Because there is a completely separate situation brewing between Papoose and a major New York rapper that directly ties into why Claressa's rap career has been positioned the way it has been positioned. And once you see the connection between those two stories, everything you just watched is going to make even more sense. Trust me on this one, the next video is the missing piece. Click it now.